So
So
y'all are ready to get it popping whenever.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought we were waiting because it says through a breakout room. So I thought we would.
I don't even know what I'm
No,
doing.
I feel you.
Sorry.
I didn't expect to see this many people in here.
Nope, this
I
is the
thought
room.
And we're live on YouTube. Nice.
Hi, fans. Marcus, have you made a speech drop yet?
No, I'm about to.
Okay. Judges will have their video on during the round, correct? That is what's required. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's why. I'm gonna type the code in chat. Everybody get that?
Got it.
I'm gonna upload the one you see now. Or actually, I'm sorry. I have that.
Packer, what's your background of? You're muted.
Yeah, nothing. I just sort of found it online. It's a library of.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like a library of notoriety that I was supposed to know.
No.
It kind of looks like the Hogwarts library, just like the part they're not supposed to go in, the restricted section, because of how like gloomy it kind of looks.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I don't think it is the Hogwarts library, but.
Quentin, is Chester nearby? The dog?
Oh, he's in the living room. I moved to my office just because. Like
I was hoping to get to see a dog. It's all good. I had Hannah judge me today, and her name was her name, so that was fun.
Yeah. She was supposed to do this stuff, but she had to go to work.
Alan, good to see you as always.
Yeah, good to see you too, Tess.
How are things like?
Well, it's doing okay at the moment. It's exciting to be judging in finals at my first ever college tournament as a judge where I can actually judge open.
Yeah, look at you. That has to mean something, right?
Yeah, I was yeah, but I find that I like judging good debates now and not just seeing novices and juniors, because as much as it's important to support them, it's more enjoyable to judge a debate when there's actual impact calculus.
It's just a different part of your brain. Instead of like your educator hat being on, you're like, you can be more critical because we can take it.
Yeah, and also you know how if you're judging a debate and neither side tells you why their impacts matter, it can actually be harder to make a decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm uploading the one I see.
Great.
Ready to go.
All right, I'm downloading it. I'm
All right.
ready. I'm good. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Is everyone else ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, sounds like a yes. Advantage 1 is legal marijuana. Current standards for demonstrating a good moral character for legal permanent residents exclude thousands of legal cannabis investors and consumers in the U.S. and Canada. Munis 20 marijuana legalization is swept through the U.S. However, still Schedule 1 in the CSA involvement in industry results of water. To GMC, this tension affects thousands of unfairly penalized user business people. The average American will fail to meet requirements. Question: a dangerous tension for applicants employed in marijuana cannot lie, but admitting a federal drug time legal permanent bars is doing business with top health policy towards entrepreneurs is contradictory, arbitrary, penalized law-abiding non-citizens for any involvement in superficial or substantial with the legal industry. Legislation must be ready to rectify this inconsistency. This is decimating the industry despite trends towards legalization. Owens 18 visits in the U.S. is a country that could lead to a lifetime ban for foreign nationals invested in marijuana, which hurt the sector. Border agents permanently ban anyone who work investors who are taken even after use becomes a illegal. Chilling investment in the border have absolute power for that person visit demographic, have the power to ask questions and act equipment maker with the ban after colleagues were drug traffickers. Continent-wide market is coming. Will solve cartels unless the travel limits derail at lemon. 18 cannabis is legal along the entire Pacific Coast and North American market. To make this rally, one federal policy can be changed. A border can bar for like the U.S. will face pressure to broad reform within neighbors on both sides. But we can build pressure to do states legalize as well. The capitalist in a market funnel. Significant sums of cartels, a legal market that regulates is the quickest way to choke off that black market and support against the criminal activity. Drug trafficking causes global WMD conflict. 16 narco states become fixtures of politics, fostering durable disorder. Institutions become hollow and predatory. Criminalized rights are places of corruption. Extortions, assassination, coups, and civil war sanctions would fund WMD and threaten ancient crop space and ecological sites. Cultivate drugs, affects radiant instability internationally. Latin America, Africa, Yemen, affect globalization around the world. Independently, travel limits derail pot innovation by wrecking investment and creating a chilling effect. Spikes 18 stocks, open law related lifetime bans in the United States, and then a non-citizen who has been a trafficker isn't allowed. Investors would be able to cross it appear horrible for marijuana stocks. Investors are forever banned from renting. They put money in other places. Individuals who have family in the U.S. might avoid working for the industry laws would apply to Germany, the UK, and several other countries. Canada's key. It'll be the bleeding edge of regulatory ambiguity solved for Miro. 18 Canada become global carrier cannabis producing the best of the world despite legalization unless the laws and markets open up. This could be the next BlackBerry. Pot innovation remediates extinction from inevitable meltdowns and from nuclear war. Green 18 cannabis combats radioactivity. Humans may survive nuclear war and nuclear winter with marijuana soften hellfire and apocalyptic horsemen. The chip the following heavy metals best fighter remediated plants even if we don't get blown up by radioactive contaminations. Widespread radiation as the industrial byproducts of growing mass cannabis is a big part of the cleanup and solves flu and HIV, cubby, non-endocannabinoids treating the most troubling diseases people now face, including flu and HIV, prevent excessive inflammatory response. A solution that could save millions. Both are existential. Swatch S-Pen and Alta-17 biology is unchecked cause extinction while low probability of actuation because the extraordinary consequence A5N1 will evolve through natural or lab manipulation could be GCBR damage to government instability and security actions in current context takes time and extraordinary damage to occur HIV via GCBR. Canada advantage. Unfettered Canadian pots getting sustainable growth. First, GDP robust industry doubles at Hasco. 18 marijuana is good for the economy. Predicted booster 2 trillion non short term with a stigma more enticing ways to consume. Expect a positive correlation between Canadian GDP and marijuana to continue. Second is border crossing pot. Base limits Rex commerce through congestion. Drugman 18 impacts extend beyond personal consequences. A commercial driver's car admits their driver will employer face smuggling penny through threat to CTP 18 certification can be trading relations even small disruption. Process have substantial economic effects. Marijuana come up severely to U.S. Canada further injecting uncertainty how Trump will approach the station. Justice push for zero tolerance at the border and natural extension of border security decline causes Quebec secession causes great power war. Matthews 14 for World War III. If Russia if Quebec city Canada could go to war China or Russia could build alliance with Quebec economic reasons could provide the agenda for war. Russia, China, Iran could use the distraction of their boundaries aiming rebels would directly threaten the U.S. Quebec could fuel a separatist movement within countries and near peer competitor bases on North Korea would have the same effect as Germany's race to rival Britain before World War I. Independently, border penalties make Canadians litigate every minor pot offense. Overloads Canadian court. Singer 18 marijuana become regulated. General violations do not carry a nominal penalty over $200 penalty for underage possession may be sufficient grounds for U.S. to ban a person for life. This rule results in a proliferation of pot-related tickets disputed at the courts in Canada. No Canadian is likely to plead guilty. This results in a complex legal proceedings primarily due to American opium. Pot cases are a unique burden. McDonald 18 drug cases clog the court system because of the length of time it required. It takes decades. These things that have very subjective traits could remain a week after use. What relevance has the ability to drive as well as those who have regularly developed tolerance and conviction rate is far below the rate for alcohol as well as it takes much longer to move through courts to predict the growing backlog. Clog Rex judicial modeling which is key. Good global governance that Canada's key. Mac 13 Canada takes part in the internationalization of all the court's workload concerning factors intersect the court receives visitors from developing countries. Russia and Ukraine interested in methodology of decision making. These relations launch good governance. Canadian justice decision global leader and judicial training. Canadian judges been sent abroad. Developing countries prefer Canada, but granted they consider the U.S. over a negative overwhelm. The UK and France are colonial. Canada's neutral. Strong post-COVID risk governance is vital. Extinction. Lou et al. 20 COVID response to exasperating internationals and not clearly distinguished from hazards that are broadly transactional like climate, AI, or bioorganic potential risk governance. The president is insufficient to deal with COVID with exactly an argument for repetitive them ensure why they creeping factors gradually accumulating catastrophic what lessons can we start from COVID for existential risk as well self-replicating risk saying national response strategies must minimize exposure to long-term AI, nanomolecular manufacturing, and biotech self-replicating legal innovations and indoctrination for decades to come international parameters around existential risks. Questionably how we will muddle through civilization collapse. Canadian court clock prevents cyber normating 117 cybercrimes getting attention with Canada systems not being treated seriously. 60% of organization reported loss in international coordination supported by the strategy of black certainty of punishment clock courses the timelines following certain results of fear white collar persecution the need to crit cybercrimes rising. Different sentences will need sentences to move forward international cooperation by sending crimes are being taken seriously. That causes nuclear war. Mona's in noon 18 error rather than aggression is likely catalyst of nuclear catastrophe hackers to serve false warning at a time essential with little communication minutes of decision risk miscalculate blunder prescription for global disaster plan. The United States federal government should remove marijuana inadmissibility criteria for legal immigration to the United States. Solvency. Lessening LPR inadmissibility is sufficient and necessary. It's a statutory reference point for all other references to inadmissibility. Morowitz. 8. The obvious group affected by drug inadmissibility are those who seek to immigrate. The ground is found in section of the INA that pertains to immigrants through cross references. Congress has supported into other aspects of immigration laws. Cross references limit relief for persons that are not LPRs. Operates to Trump statutorily recognized compelling exquisite. Only Congress solves it. It's in this area. There's zero executive discretion, and it's seen as a test case, so there's no chance of acquiescence. Canon 16. Despite states marijuana can be ground for deportation in both marijuana and immigration policy, the administration is limited enforcement, unable to change through legislation. Use enforcement discretion to achieve preferred policy. Serves as an important test of power of the executive to set policy through selective enforcement rather than legislative decision. Is not boundless, particularly when reduced to policy for a prosecutor were and to announce that she would not bring future cases, regardless of the fact we would not defer to effectively strike laws from books. A clearly usurpation of legislative prerogative. Open for context.
I was talking, but was muted. All right, is everyone good for cross? Can I get nods from judges? Because I'm looking at your faces. Great, thank you. Let's talk about the advantage one. So drug trafficking causes WMD usage, correct?
Yep.
What WMDs do you spec? Like nuke weapons, radioactive, stuff like that?
Nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons, cool. Bottom of the advantage talks about how weed is key to resolve radioactivity. So if drug cartels lead to an increased use of WMDs, but they also increase the amount of weed that we have, don't they resolve the impact?
No, our argument is that global WMD conflict that results as a result of failed states would obviously involve a bunch of nuclear weapons. Those would cause enough to probably obliterate, if not like everything. So it's like our argument is that war would be huge. If we can win an argument that your war is small and contained, then that means that marijuana would outweigh because we can solve that. But we'll win that our global WMD conflict will probably eviscerate the entire world.
Why?
And
Yeah. Marcus, I got it. You keep going, but I got it. You think you got a big war going on. Why do cartels lead to this big war? I know that you say corruption, but there are states that have been strengthened post cartels. So I'm confused why there's like instability.
You're going to go for cartels. Good. Cartels are not only harmful to states, to states in general, because again, illicit activity that goes on in their country perceives to take away power from their ability to enforce. It causes states to be in a position where they either look weak or they have to crack down on the cartels. This causes states to become narco states and they become fixated on drug enforcement, and that breaks down civil liberties. And that is an erosion of things like authoritarianism and like things. I mean, that is erosion of things like democracy, and those norms live like globally.
So I see like 5 link chains in there before we even get to nuclear weapon usage. Got it.
I mean, when you get up here and say that cartels are good for states, it's going to just say that like cartels like have. So it's like
plain text, please. You remove marijuana inadmissibility criteria for legal immigration to the United States.
Yep.
So this is grounded in the INA, and it's for LPR. Got it. This is one statutory restriction, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The topic is plural.
The topic is plural because the government has plenty of restrictions on immigration. The topic literally could not read restriction because like it would not make sense grammatically because the government
How can it not say remove a statutory restriction on legal immigration into the United States? Seems to resolve all your arguments.
What our argument is that the word substantial modifies restriction, which means that we have to remove a substantial restriction, and the abs restriction is substantial, and we can
restrictions. Got it. Let's talk about Canada. Are Canada's courts clogged now, and you resolve court clog because of pot cases?
No, Canada's courts are not clogged, and they will be further clogged by the border laws because of marijuana legalization, adding pressure on the amount of people who are smoking, and crossing that border. So that's our argument.
Got it. I will send the doc. My pen fell, so I'm going to pick that up and then grab my table tote and set up, and then I'll give the order. But the doc is in the speech trap. Ouch. I just hit my head on the table. This is on YouTube. Everyone saw me do that.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It didn't hurt. The embarrassment is more of a hurt.
I understand that feeling.
Yeah, I'm just very clumsy. Okay, so the order is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off, then advantage 1, advantage 2.
Let me open it up.
Sounds good. I'm gonna get some water while you do that. Marcus, are you still pulling it up?
I'm good. I should have said that.
Oh, okay, you're good. Judges, can I get visible nods from you all if you are ready? Great. Counterplan text: the United States federal government should invest $50 billion in the stock market, divided evenly in the Aurora cannabis, organigram, and Valence. Solves Boosie industry and avoids immigration links. Williams 20. Cannabis stocks lost half the value, especially for Canadian stocks. Aurora cannabis is the most popular stock, down 91% head by a plethora of problems struggle to access the traditional forms of financing. The profit estimates remain highly floated in COVID-19. Canadian cannabis stocks in the fast track organigram. People producing 4 million kilos of edibles. Extraction service for producing Valence that they enter the major growth of edibles when infused by topicals or matter margins lower. And for is the only licensed producer on the chart with 3 licensed facilities, maximum annual output, and bringing the needing the much marijuana. Now, topicality. Immigration reform requires multiple laws to increase access to lawful permanent residence and citizenship. Giovanni 13. Gridlock has stalled immigration reform adjustment to overall legal immigration admission numbers. The key is the coordinating various proposals to a more cohesive set of laws that acknowledge the need for improved legal immigration system to provide a solution allowing transition to lawful permanent residence. And plural means more than one. Restrictions is plural. Collins dictionary note date. Plural more than one. They violate the only effect marijuana restrictions, and it's only one restriction, which isn't even all the toxicology restrictions on legal immigration. TBA should remove all toxicology restrictions. Prefer one. Ground coordinate arcs are predicated on large shifts in the legal permanent residence. The U.S. Their anti roads all are linked ground and roads with generic useless means class and no education because we'll never get to have a meaningful discussion of the AF. 2 limits it implies that multiple steps are necessary to process the immigration reform that prevents really one-off apps that only deal with relatively small packages in the immigration system. Overall, the negative popular interprets the key stations for a meaningful question and discussion throughout the entire season. 3 extra T parts of the plan affect overall marijuana policy, not within the resolution for resident to increase the unfair burden. So vote neg. T's of voters for NFA rules keeping interest of best interpreted race at the bottom. Next is the Waltis said a lack of congressional action on immigration policies enabled state-led resistance to federal immigration executive orders. This is key to block the wall. Reg 18. Backlash by states. The executive actions demonstrated state officials not content with the executive backlash have the resources to challenge the president began offering resistance in areas of immigrant immigration the major danger of executive action and backlash of the state level political climate against the ability to declare its intention to construct a physical wall around the border that amidst the policy cancellation state counter emergency to challenge the terms of authority that these states were supported all Trump's executive orders dealing with the lawsuits backed by states that resulted in injections. B. Southern border wall estimates biodiversity extinction. Ripple 18. A single species that is supreme importance to the independence of life. The ripple effect of the human civil and components of biological diversity face 1,000 face direct consequences without biodiversity. There's no future for humanity. Sections of the wall constructed are reducing connectivity to the reserves of the century of multinational conservation investment. U.S. American border spans eco regions support considerable biodiversity, destroys vegetation, kills animals, fragments, habitats, erodes soils, changes wildlife behavior, elevating risk of complete removal. Next is the brain danger disad. A. American harsh immigration policies have led to a massive return of immigrants to India. Salty and 17. In President's time in office, over 2.1 million Indian nationals living in the U.S. roughly 1 million still dependent on visas and structural election number of Indian residents searching for jobs in India has come tenfold. The application being challenged at the Trump rolled out American first signed executive order wide students come to package does not exist. B. Preventing drain trade and pulling talent back in India is the only way to meet professional crunches essential for sustained economic growth. Government 2020. Landmark elections is slow increase of China's renewed interest in India is not confident around growth of the India needs to qualify professionals in increased entities who work for the majority of unskilled living safety skills at all levels in India has to rely on the domestic supply is important to stem the flow of the talent out to continue the growing development happen to the full of qualified professionals that have left the country convinced them to come back now persuade the Indian diaspora want to return the time is right. C. Indian economic strength is key to respond to Chinese aggression in the Himalayas and prevent conflicts. 90-20. China's recent belligerence in the Himalayas, the reminiscence of bullying in the Sino-Indian context, the national strength is necessary to turn international hostility into a face nature challenges China's defense budget and enables to tap reform in the international community searching for the robust economic military partner. India as a partner. India should not let itself be drawn into armed conflict or long-term solution requires econ strong into India with a democratic allies to back it up. Econ self-improvement is key to Chinese aggression. And next is the backlash. You said A. Permissive immigration policy collapses U.S. democratic model turns case. Martin 20. Our premise for producing seems to enter migration not to spirit people instead of recognize potential backlash record because volume without permission for is directed refugee to be acceptable regard to constraints that persist to praise but did not endure numbers of use or to use and control migration to weaken checks and balances skillful playing in the backlash for and demand for autocracy stakes or anti-migration and effects for threatens wider consequences the extremist parties find the richest opportunities to future authority and future stalwart democracies U.S. is vulnerable or demonstrate fragile to preserve space to open immigration policy research authorities need frustration of the role of the public perception need violation of regular migration following power screening factions that allow to decriminalize clandestine political working can barely get off the ground. B. Impacts resilience. We're in the age of existential crisis. crisis, cyber great power competition, pandemic climate survival depends on domestic community reservation of liberal democratic norms. Determined 20. The neoliberal wave is coming to a close in the coming era. Health crisis, climate, cyber attacks, global economic competition, all challenges whether there needs to be a democracy. They prevent these challenges impossible to endure. When necessary, grand strategy, resilience, to come reduce the high goal for the American public policy, makes to preserve constitutional democracy better prepared to face the next crisis. Any true start requires a domestic foundation. Now on the read advantage 1. Legalization isn't happening anytime soon. It's too political for widespread support. Marijuana retail report 20. I've never heard of so people get excited about bills and federal legalization. Bills notoriously going nowhere. Will continue to go nowhere. Marijuana is still too politically hot for Congress to do anything. The House has planned to vote around marijuana. Federal marijuana seems so different too. Legal weed in Canada is only fueled the black market, not reduced it. Turbo 20. Marijuana is legalized across Canada. The economy is still supported by the underground supply billions. Will livestock the market. The legal market struggling to attract buyers. So the product is more expensive, lower quality. 40% of marijuana consumers admit obtaining illegal and legislation falling short of expectation. The black market is the rampant effort because consumers are less sensitive about trying the product. 3. As long as there's demand, cartels exist. They just shift production. Mortine 19. Potential externalities condemn supply side to nothing for the use only consumer production supply to shift to workers border direct releases direct legislation migrating within and cross countries by production migration is the problem that nothing now the profit supply side and the true sources of epidemic still use drug users. 4. Innovation strong now. Marijuana ensures innovation in U.S. companies already partner internationally. Goodness 18. Marijuana first been created in attention. We're seeing alternatives shifting the cannabis market. The number of marijuana entrepreneurs continues to increase the cost of the solution that cannabis plans to do so for industry drugs and veterinary partners. The question is what industry cannabis is disrupting innovation career for creative entrepreneurs who's welcome and will continue to thrive. Also, cartels solve their impact of WMDs because they have weed, which can solve for radioactivity, which means that they're able to resolve the impact of the weapons that they say they use. Also, cartels lead to stability because there's economic growth that's coming into the country, which means that you should probably err heavily negative on this question. Now on Canada. 1. Canada's legal weed industry is the fulcrum for global legal marijuana industry. Billions of investment ensures successes regardless. 19. Canada will legalize marijuana and ignite reactions. Canadian markets, expected reaction, entrepreneurs, the financial markets, U.S. corporations, videos, advice, and Goldman Sachs, the top tier ranks of made president and marijuana shifting the mainstream investment sector. Also prefer RF to theirs. They are empirical and never indicate the measures overwhelm billions of international investment. 2. Canadian courts are transitioning away from criminal prosecutions for minor drug offenses. Charges aren't affecting the backlog. Powell 20. The federal weekend targeting drug possession is charged to the criminal justice system to reduce backlogs. The South Korean COVID-19 going to lead to short reform. New guidelines effective fed prosecutors from focusing on public safety conservative pursuing all measures of diversion and justice system. 3. COVID trumps Canada's econ. Cost 20. GDP contracted 38.7% of every component at its lowest point. Economic output remains in the 90.9% below pre-pandemic levels. Household spending dropped 13.11% in the quarter. Investment fell 16.2%. They continue in most extravagant deficit spending. What makes it the wisest thing now for the long term. Now, also independent voter on the affirmative. Their authors use ableist slurs like dumb and cripple in a negative connotation. They shouldn't read evidence that has this. It's a violent representation and endorsement that continues to obscure the lives of people who are the lives of disability. It makes this the norm. It's a final live stream round. The authors that we support give the platform to what we deem acceptable. Do not let them continue to have this in rounds. 3 minutes.
All right. Yeah, you good?
Mhm.
All right. All right. What card said what, and what was that?
Spites 18, the title of the article, this has to be the dumbest reason ever for a pullback in marijuana stocks, continues to reference dumb. That's a slur against people with disabilities. Camming 816 talks about crippling the American criminal justice system.
Let's just talk about the fun marijuana counterplan. If marijuana is still federally illegal in most states, how do you solve?
Your argument is about investment.
No, it's not. It's about eventually the legalization and innovation of weed in the United States, which we will.
Investment leads to innovation. We give them $50 billion. You think they're going to sit on their butt and do nothing with it? No, they're going to innovate. What?
It's federally illegal, so it's like in most states they can't even innovate if you funded them to. So it's like, what are they?
Williams is clear that these companies are thriving and they need investment, and that's key in order to allow.
You read a card that says that again. This card is about Canadian cannabis stock, and it says organic.
How is talk about Canadian cannabis?
Wait.
I don't understand why me reading a Canadian cannabis counterplan doesn't link to the app.
Wait. So what does this do about marijuana legalization or use in innovation in the U.S.? Does it not affect it?
If companies in Canada are doing really awesome, then legalization will probably happen.
Oh, that's not how that works. But plural means more than one. Can you explain how the reading of the resolution means that it must be plural restrictions? Because the way that I read the resolution, I could interpret that as meaning that there's multiple restrictions in the status quo that could be removed.
Nope. The United States federal government should implement an immigration reform that removes statutory restrictions on legal immigration into the United States, if it was meant to be where the ask could only defend one, they would say immigration reform that removes a statutory restriction on legal immigration into the United States.
But besides that point, like that's like your just like opinion on like your reading of the resolution. Like there's no card that outlines like that's the way you have to read the resolution, right?
We
Like,
define plural. You do not textually meet the topic.
No, that is your interpretation of your reading. I countered your interpretation and I said you could read it in another way. And your interpretation, your opinion on it is that is the way that the interpretation of the resolution should be read. So like wherever you read
Marcus, I attended the topic writing Zooms that we had this summer. It was intended for it to be multiple restrictions.
Okay.
It is supposed to be an immigration reform. The Giovanni 13 evidence also corroborates this. An immigration reform that removes one restriction is not an immigration reform.
But if it affects a substantial amount of people, how do you still not get links and everything to all
It's
your?
not a question of substantial people. It's substantial statutory restrictions.
Are you sure that we
should remove substantial restrictions, not
over the number of people? Or is that a better debate? Let's see. All right. I don't think I need prep. I'm sending it out.
I don't see it up.
I'm posting. I'm sorry. I have to save it.
Got it.
Oops. This one.
What are we waiting on?
Here, I'm sorry. Here it is. I have a lot of speech docs on my desktop, so I just.
I feel that. I complain about why my computer is so slow, but then I have hundreds of documents open. So
Yeah, the life of a debater. Are you even a debater if you don't have 20 tabs and 10 Word docs open most of the time?
Preach, Alan. All right, I'm downloading the 1AR. I'll let you know when it's open.
For sure.
I have it. I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. The order is going to be marijuana advantage, then the Canada advantage, then the T like plural restrictions, the fund marijuana counterplan, the India brain drain disad, the backlash disad, and then the Trump border disad.
Great, Marcus. I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. Is everyone else ready? Okay. Latin America conflict causes Russia and China to fill the vacuum. They have conceded a terminal impact to disadvantage to change this game over. Power competition goes nuclear, and nuclear terrorism causes extinction. The U.S. will retaliate to Russia and China, and marijuana eats up radioactivity and solves nuclear winter, and flu and Zika kill us through mutations and evolutionary reversal. Legal cannabis is on the brink of prospering now, but immigration policy have a chilling effect on the market, deterring thousands of cannabis investors. That's munitions bites. Cartels are exploiting this law by illegally smuggling drugs, which turn the marijuana industry even more. Their argument about legalization not happening doesn't assume the ask or revitalization of the marijuana industry, which sees it as economically massively profitable to do so. The legal weed fuel the black market argument is the argument in the status quo. We have made the argument that that is the reason that the border is the reason why that they have this such an illicit market, because they can do smuggling over things like the border. The AF gets rid of that, which means that that's a non-starter. The cartels exist with demand. We take out the demand because we get rid of the illegality at the border, which means that there's no demand for them to smuggle anymore. The innovation strong now argument is also a non-starter because, again, we've read arguments, multiple arguments that said that there's a legal chilling effect, and even if there is some innovation going on now, that it could be a whole lot better and faster, which resolving all of our impacts, which is a unique impact and a unique reason to vote F. The argument that cartels solve some WMDs is, quite frankly, just wrong. Like our whole argument about that is like scientists use cannabinoids to effectively do that, not cartels. So it's like whatever. The Canada advantage. They've conceded the terminal impact to disadvantage as well. Quebec secessionism causes China and Russia to expand their influence, and the rest causes great power war. Independently, global secessionism causes pandemics, warming, and terrorism by undermining national cohesion and good governance, solve through resilience. Complexity makes collapse inevitable otherwise, and cyber threats cascade, which is an independent scenario that they don't have ink on. The Canada's legal weed, or the argument on the argument that Canada's legal weed is billions is an argument for us because we need to expand the border and interval border between us so that both of our economies can prosper. The argument that they're shifting away is they have to because they can't do it because of U.S. laws. Our argument says that. The argument that COVID thumps is a brink argument for their economy, which is the reason why the app would be extremely important right now. The argument about ableist slurs and the evidence, I will make a statement here. I don't endorse the evidence. I don't endorse everything that they say. I shouldn't lose because somebody else said something offensive. I just read what the evidence is saying. I didn't even read the ableist slurs. So it's like the only person who actually reworded that and said it was them. So it's like we could have just left that alone. I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. We meet first is grammar substantial modifies restriction. We have to unrestrict immigration a lot, which we do, not unrestrict a lot of immigration. 2, marijuana inadmissibility covers 80% of potential immigrants. Morowitz, 0880 violation serves as inadmissibility regardless of how minor remote times. 79% tried to buy marijuana, 45 to even assuming all constitution due to waiver more than 7 out of 10 would be inadmissible. Drug admissibility was applied, fully overshadow all other policies underlying the immigration system. You should gut check their T argument because it's not outlined anywhere in their interpretations. It's all spin because, like I said, there's no definition that says that you have to read the resolution that way for it to be plural. It's only their interpretation and opinion on it. So if we win that, we make a better model of debate, which is not going to be about the number of restrictions, but actually about how many people you affect, then we will win this debate. 3 is we meet marijuana inadmissibility, its own separate criterion. So obviously we can't have ruled out all toxicology because again, marijuana inadmissibility is its own outlined legal criterion in the INA. Interpret the planet of vacuum breeding and journalistic evidence suggesting other parts of the INA should change. It's not an act of clarification, only an opportunity to negative point out all causes. Counter-interpretation act needs to remove a considerable restriction. Pause for no precise formula is used. The word substantial means considerable amount. It does not apply a specific number. Preferred. First is picks. Big ass can't answer small exceptions but compete without changing the threats of policy, but small s still links to generic. That's bad for debate. Makes the activate itself to eviscerate ask ground. 2 is education. High a higher threshold for ask to respond to current events and topic evolution to incentivize ongoing research. 3 is functional limits often definite. Parole forces legal status advantages that are very hard to come up with. 4 is unpredictable limits. Their evidence has no intent to define and they can change the math or the number of restrictions you need to do every round to limit out another app. 5 is no abuse or potential. App affects hundreds of thousands. Cannabis investment has potential to realize Canada's economy with trillions. If they don't read specific links, that's not my fault. T is not a question of if the diss has don't link. 6 is substance there. Use of T is a way to divorce from substance. Turns away all their offense. They have to win. We made the debate impossible. Otherwise, they clearly didn't want to talk about the app so they can get a cheap one on T. 7 is underlimiting is better than overlimiting. Competitive debates over a plethora of multiple topics is better education than having the same debate over and over. Prefer reasonability and contextual use. Defining substantial immigration numerically invites substantial immigration numerically invites self-serving arbitrariness. Competing interpretations empirically leads to a race to a bottom as people try to limit out as many as they can. The fund marijuana counterclaim. Cross-X was damning on this. They can't solve it. Still federally illegal, which means in most states, even if they funded them, that it still wouldn't be able to do any innovation, which means that they can't solve any of our advantages. Also, they funded a Canadian investment, which means that if at worst they can't solve in the US or solve any of our border arguments about how the border is causing stress or a unique chilling effect on the industry itself. So they can't solve any of the affirmative. It's on them to determine on how they solve it. They did not do so in the 2 and C. The counterclaim's ambiguity wrecks wrecks resources devoted to regulatory compliance, wrecks productivity, causes shortage and guarantees black market filling. Race 18 dispensaries increases shortage in supply chain issues effectively expected exacerbated restrictive regulation. Colorado's industry is example of the stifling effect regulation is issue that dumps them a drag on efficiency productivity when you're trying to get clarified. And also cannabis stuff, cannabis research and stuff takes trillions of dollars in investment, which is what our act talks about, which is why we need trillions of dollars. They only invested 50 billion. That really doesn't solve the entire global marijuana market, which is what our evidence says that we have access to. The counterpoint doesn't solve. Permutation do both stalls because there's no link to any of these garbage dissets. The India brain drain disset, weakening investment will stagnate Indian growth of abundant 18. The investments held 13 low. Freshman investment is critical for India. India needs suggested to gradual gain language has below the 8% tree. Their oil prices are actually there's no link uniqueness on this because Trump's doing more immigration stuff right now. Taylor and Smallberg 925. He's proposed reshaping legal immigration by adopting a system similar to those used by Australia and Canada. Trump would end diversity via visa lottery. They're turning to democracy about immigration, eroding cohesion through pluralism. The first part of the one he sees a link turn and says that a majority of people this is on the populism dissent. I'm sorry, I fucked that up. And now I fucked up the last thing. These both don't have a generic. These both are generic links, not specific to the app. Make them read a specific link, and if they do read a specific link, I get new link answers.
Did you send a marked doc?
I didn't mark cards. I just didn't read cards.
Sorry, marked and like my understanding is like cleaning up. So You like
Um,
jumped around. Ev was red, not red, stuff like that.
I guess.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.
I'm not prepping. I just have my hands in my lap. Just
Setting out the kind of version.
great. Downloading. Okay, it's open. I'll start my 4 minutes of prep now. Let me send the NR. And then I will give the order once I grab my stamp. Okay, is everyone ready for the order? It's first going to be populism, or the backlash just saw. Then it will be case in order marijuana in Canada. Sorry, it's counterplan, backlash, case, advantage 1, advantage 2.
What?
So counterplan on top. I forgot that was a sheet.
Counterplan backlash, is that populism?
Yeah, it's like the Martin notes. And then advantage 1, advantage 2, T, wall, brain drain.
Okay.
Alrighty. I need visual nods from everyone. Marcus?
Wait, did you upload a doc? I'm sorry.
Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't have that pulled up. This.
Oh, gotcha. It's the same doc, the document, I just put my stuff on top.
Okay, that makes sense.
The thing about before about how my computer freaks out with how many documents I have open, figure it'd make more sense to put it in the same doc. Do you have it open?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, sorry. I'm just like always waiting for you to have it open and then, okay. On the counterplane, we're kicking it, but that doesn't matter. On backlash, you make a link term, but that's the only argument you make. You should have been heavily negative on this question. One, you say that it's popular, but our evidence says that legalization of marijuana is not popular now, which means that should give us sufficient defense on to say that you don't lead it, that you don't. Second, we say that extremist groups are the ones that are going to be revitalized over this. Extremist groups, when you let in immigrants who use marijuana, are probably going to use this as even more to inflame them because they're just, quote, degenerates or they lack moral character. That will just inflame them more. There's no reasons why that's popular. The fact that inadmissibility standards still exist probably proves my evidence further, but I'm not going for it. Go on the legal marijuana advantage. You have conceded this third argument, which is that it shifted. You say that you take out demand, but we say that cartels will just shift to another product. If you take away their profit that they give away, they'll do cocaine or they'll do shrooms or something else. You conceded that, which means that it's terminal defense to any argument about cartels. You say all of cartels lead to WMDs. It's not specific to weed or anything like that. It's about it's about the active drugs. The cartels are still going to exist because of how profitable that they are, which means that you don't take out their demand. You only take out demand for weed. You only take out demand for weed, but you don't for other drugs. Which means cartels are still going to exist. Probably means that your impact's inevitable. You've also conceded that the cartels solve WMDs. You say scientists are the ones that are able to do it, but cartels have trillions of dollars behind them, which means that they could surely fund scientists too in order to resolve the radioactivity of that. That's two significant pieces of defense on this advantage for you to prefer our conceded dissent and one that only had one argument on it. Now, on the Canada argument, you did not do enough. You did not do enough work on this. We say that they're already shifting away. That was the COVID argument. You say that that's why a reason why the affirmative is good, but no, we say that a reason why it's good. But the Powell 20 evidence is very clear that because of COVID, they're transitioning away from minor drug offenses, which means there's no court plug happening now. It's more likely for them to stick with this because it's making a more efficient system, which that gives the considerable reasons as to why you should err heavily negative that Canadian court plug is likely being resolved in the status quo. Now on T. You should extend the second piece of evidence that they make that's about how it affects 80% of immigrants. That will garner us the link, but there's still an independent voter that we can go for on this argument. You did not define immigration reform like the Giordano 13 evidence does, which supports a view that plural restrictions have to be removed. The Giordano 13 evidence is very clear that immigration reform is multiple laws in order to affect LPR. You remove one law for LPR, which means that you are not immigration reform. If you just remove a single restriction, which means that you are not topical. You didn't read a reason. You said a reasonability reasonability in this to interpret for this specific reason, but the card that you read was contextual to substantial. There was no reason as to why you should default reasonability for questions of immigration reform. Immigration reform is necessarily needed for us to garner all of our links. If you've conceded also that T's a voter for NFA rules, which means it's a jurisdictional issue. If they did not define immigration reform, there is not a way that you can vote for the affirmative because they do not pass an immigration reform or show that they meant an immigration reform. They only talked about restrictions and substantial. That means that you read the wrong T block. Oops, game over. Now let's talk about the other mistake that they made. That was conceding the wall dissent. The wall dissent is very clear that states right now are stopping Trump from being able to do the wall. But whenever they pass, whenever the athletes have favorable immigration policies, they're no longer allowed to. It destroys the FISM balance, which means that the wall will be reinstated because Trump will use it because states will back down because there's favorable immigration laws being passed, and the wall destroys biodiversity. State federalism is high now and resulted in successful halting of Trump's wall. Goldson, Hartman, and COVID-19. Immigration policy continues to be marked as a federal conflict with governments responded by withdrawing troops from the border. Trump issued a proclamation suspending border control to all asylum seekers that are concerns of result instead of substantial federal implications of circulating through careful funds to fulfill a promise of the wall. Trump issued a proclamation to lateral transfer funds in response to government's national guard troops from the border. The 16th state coalition failed to the federal court arguing emergency place defiling federal law, cut the carded law. Now the wall leads to destruction of biodiversity. That independently the wall bypasses environment laws. I'm skipping that card. The wall passes bypasses environment laws, destroys habitats, and devalues conservation investment in research. Peters et al. 18. While certain the continents with biologically diverse regions already built section to reducing habitats of border wall bypasses environmental law. Congress passed the real idea to continue to the wave laws so that the walls construction including ESA and NEPA. The border wall has a wildlife population limited degrading fire fragmenting habitats. Borderlands containing critically endangered construction of the wall associated infrastructure. Cut the card in infrastructure. We have given a strong internal link to this. They put literally nothing on it. They didn't have it in their order, which means that it is very clear that you can put this first on strength of link, but also biodiversity loss means that they probably can't resolve things like marijuana. In order to have marijuana innovation, you need to have biodiversity, but they removed that through the wall. Also, biodiversity loss means extinction. 2016. Another existential for biodiversity loss, the repercussions of severe nuclear conflict. All populations around the world are dwindling, disappearing, alarming, approaching, and typical existential losses. Ecosystem requires the same human population, social knowledge, economic instability, and human life. Biodiversity is the threat multiplier. The exacerbates the existing conflict, and entire new cycles. Initiated dramatic transformation, even faster, single human lifetime. Now we're also going for brain drain because you did not put nearly enough on it. Vote negative to prevent Indochina war in the Himalayas. Trump's restrictive stance on immigration is currently causing immigrant Indian migrants to return home, which will promote infrastructure development capacity in India. The linchpin is promoting economic development that prevents war between India and China. Recent competition in the Himalayas provides a flashpoint for conflict that is unintentionally escalate. And we're not going to read that next card, but we will answer your Buddha evidence. It's awful. One, it functions as uniqueness. If unemployment is high, that encourages more immigrants to come to the U.S. when new restrictions are lifted. Two, India's econ recovers from COVID and maintains medium growth long-term projections are key. Mission 20. The medium and long-term economic outlook for India remains favorable despite a dip in due to coronavirus. Consumer spending at forecasting 42%. Consumption expenditure will double by 2030. The India economy around us pandemic improving the growth of the second half of 2020 positive GDP growth of 6.7% in the fiscal year 2020. And just that always in turns case first clear for the marijuana argument. One time for marijuana innovation takes time so we can solve things like modified disease, but later Vasina indicates that China is already demonstrating hostility in the Himalayas. Nuclear war happens before innovation solves it too. Probability, no probability because everyone will consume marijuana. The flu, that should be existential through a pandemic right now. Generally, also the China's demonstrating its willingness to be aggressive right now. Also takes out the Canadian core club because we've proven that China is now a bigger threat in the amount of lynchings that you have, and we have significant defense on the three turns case post nuclear conflict. There's no immigrants to participate in the plan anyways, which you can see sequence it is set first. Very easy for you to vote. They're not topical. They conceded it is that that was some strength of link, and they didn't put enough on this. I'll send a mark doc. Great. Deleted the old one, updated the new one.
I'm starting my part now. I didn't. There we go.
Okay. Everyone's gonna go T, Canada, marijuana, the Waldesad, and sorry, here it is. T, Canada, marijuana, populism, then the or federalism decide, then the brain drain decide.
Would you mind going through that one more time?
T, Canada, marijuana, populism, brain drain.
Thanks.
Wait, my phone's ringing. It's been a long day. All right. Is everyone ready? On on T, their card read in the 1 and C is power tagged. It's never defined immigration reform, and your card does not say that immigration reform is defined as. So you said that you were the only one who's read a definition of immigration reform in this round, but you haven't even read one. You have just asserted that you have. You can go back and look at that card, and I'm not going to lose on T because clearly this card is out of context, and clearly they've conceded potential abuse isn't a voter, so no proof of in-round abuse because they've went for other stuff in this round is damning to them, because that means you can clearly prefer reasonability because there's substance in this debate for you to actually go to. They're obviously racing to the margins and trying to limit us out. Canada decide. Or Canada advantage, sorry. On the Canada advantage, they have conceded that Quebec secessionism causes China and Russia to expand their influences in the West and causes great power war. Independently, global secessionism would cause pandemics, warming, terror, and undermining the national cohesion, which turns all of their terminal impacts in the round, which is going to be important because we have external offense in this debate. There is good governance, it solves through resilience. Good governance solves all of their terminal impacts because good governance solves things like democracy and democratic modeling, which means that even if there was populist backlash to the plan, there wouldn't be global governance because our evidence indicates that people model Canada and model their judicial systems, which is what this entire advantage was about. And it's conceded most of the entirety of the debate. The argument about COVID transitioning the economy is, again, a break argument. They have to win that Canada's economy has fully collapsed before they win this argument, which they have not, which means that this is a good argument for why marijuana could bring trillions to their economy and help them out. The argument about Canadian core cloud being solved now was all very blippy and rushed through in the 2NR because the 2NR overstretched themselves going for way too much. So they're going to lose on case outweighs. The rest of this advantage is given to us. They give us all the terminal impacts to it, and there shouldn't even be any doubt that Canadian court clog is happening now because of marijuana cases, because we are the only person who have read cards on this since the 1AC, which means that you spot us all of this. Now, this comes important on the marijuana advantage because they have conceded that marijuana eats up radioactivity and solves nuclear winter, which takes out 2 of their dissets because the terminal impact is war, and they will not win. It's more likely the app. They have independently dropped flu and Zika kill us through mutations and evolutionary reversal, and these are both insulated impacts you can hang your hat on because there's no impact, there's no ink on any of these impacts, and the relative link defense to these dissets severely undercuts their ability to win any of these dissets. The argument about they shift to another product, I'm not going for cartels, so it really does not matter. This entire advantage was really botched when they didn't extend any of their arguments about marijuana innovation. Clearly, there's a legal chilling effect now. All of our 1AC cards say so. We are the only one who have the most evidence on the debate in this question. Let's get to these dissets. A general common argument among all of these dissets that I made was you should make them read a specific link. If you do not have any link explanation for any of these dissets in the rebuttal, then you should not vote on them. State federalism disset does not apply to the app because we read a card in the 1AC solvency that said that it's a congressional and federal issue because it's marijuana. That means that there's no way that they could win a link to that, which is why I asked them to read a specific link. They have not read one this entire debate, so they cannot win that. Their card that they said says marijuana is unpopular did not say it.
Can we do an air high five, Marcus?
Yeah.
Boom. Great. I'm gonna go to the bathroom really quickly. Leave you all to digest that.
Okay, I'm finally done. Okay. Is it okay if I announce? So that's cool. Or we'll have.
Go ahead.
It's a 3-0 decision for the negative. I'll go first. I get real close to voting for you, Marcus. I really do. There's a couple different reasons why. On topicality, I do not think that the negative is a good enough definition for me to vote against the AF. I look at this definition a lot, but I think the AF is winning some level of the reasonability arcs, and I sort of agree that the evidence read does not necessarily imply or mean that restrictions in this context is plural. I think the negative could have used T in another way, in that when the AF seems to be calling for a specific link, there isn't one because the AF isn't only one restriction, and it's not large enough to find a specific link, which might get into substantial debate, but there isn't one that isn't here or there. So I don't think the T debate really flows negative in this instance. I think the definition and the grammar argument of the we meet kind of persuades me a lot. And I also garner these reasonability args are pretty good here. I also think, Tess, next time I think that I would have liked you to collapse more. I think going for 2 disads and the case arcs would have helped you a lot more, because I weigh a ton of the case. I think you grant Marcus a ton of the AF. The AF is basically left writ large there. And I think, Marcus, you could have done a better job answering some of the inconsistencies of the args on the AF itself. Like, I look back at the Canada args, and the 1 in C, there's an arg that says that the Canada's economy will always be strong because of the pot industry. And then she reads the COVID arg, which gives me a long-term argument that tells me that Canada's econ is going to stay strong for a long time because of pot. But, short term right now, because of COVID, things aren't going well. But in the long term, they should be successful. So I think there's tension there. And I also think that, you drop a lot of the innovation arcs, which I think gives a lot of those arguments weight, which I kind of use those arcs to weigh against the populism disad. I don't think I really think there's a link on the brain drain disad. I don't know if Marcus increases high-skilled immigrants. I don't know what that necessary link is. And that's kind of where I'm persuaded by Marcus saying, really look at the link evidence, because I don't know if there is a direct link there. I go to the border wall disad, and I also think that the link there is a little shoddy, but I end up voting there just because I think, Marcus, I need more work there. I need you to be more decisive in why there is no link. And I think you had some access to doing this in the last speech, but you don't do this. And I think if you were more substantive in why there is no link here, I think I could see myself voting there, because I don't think the link is necessarily there, but I think it's enough for me to vote for BioD collapse as worse than nuke war. I think there's also a time frame issue. I don't know the time frame of the nuclear war coming out the AF, or when you're able to solve back for those things. And I think BioD collapse probably hurts the pot industry as well.
Thank you, Quentin.
Alan, do you want to go, or do you want me to go? It doesn't.
Oh, I can go now. So basically in this debate, I voted neg on the wild. It said, I felt that the T was not extended enough in the NR to really be winnable as a voting issue. I definitely agree with Quentin that it would have been better for the negative to collapse more. And Tess, I would have gone for 1 disad and case args, because you winning 1 disad is enough to win the wild. And while I think either the brain drain disad or the wild disad are both very winnable, I think that when you just go for 2 of them, you make it harder to weigh the thing that you're going for against the AF, and make it harder for me to make my decision. And although I could see potentially extending the T a little bit, so the 2AR has to spend time answering it with the 2-to-1 time skew, but that's probably not what I would have found most effective in this round. Anyway, as to how I evaluate this debate, I do think that the negative is ahead on the wild disad. I think that the no specific link argument is not terminal defense. I am not given a paradigmatic reason why generic links should not be evaluated. I also think that it still gives a considerable possibility of the wild disad, and at the point that there aren't any cards answering it, and the negative still has their impact, I do think the neg gets the wild disad. I think biodiversity outweighs nuclear war. It's more effectively terminalized to extinction. And Marcus, I think that by going for nuclear war, that by extending into 2AR and agreeing that Reed solves radioactivity, which is not necessarily, this is not the one thing to decide the debate, but I still think it does not help you, because nuclear war is the impact that you need to win in order to win the debate. If you do not, like, I do understand that there is definitely the potential for you to have a time frame advantage, but there isn't really meta weighing between different types of impacts. And in that case, different types of impact calculus. So in that case, in the absence of that sort of framing, in the absence of meta weighing, I default to magnitude first, and I think biodiversity loss has the highest magnitude in this debate. Oh, also, additionally, I do think that there is the potential for the AF to put an RVI on the ableism independent voter, that I feel like if you add more time into 1AR, by the way, that illusory, that parcel cat it really seems hyper real right now from Zopac. It's weird how the zoom filter interacts with the cat. But on a more serious note, I do think that there is a potential. Okay, first of all, I do, Tess, I really like the idea of introducing an independent voter about ableist language, and I agree it shouldn't be in debate, but I do think that when it wasn't a word that the other debater said, I do think that is taking a risk, because it could be offense for them. And I also think that maybe having some more offense on the Canada argument might have been helpful, because then it would have enabled you to more easily preempt whatever the 2AR was going for if you extended offense for that, because this is a debate where it's definitely true that Marcus is getting some offense from the AF that could potentially win the round for him if it was framed differently. But great round, everybody. Now, Joe?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say I agree that, having a 10-second ableism argument, that's the last thing that comes out of your mouth in your speech, is not great as a voter, right? Like when there are words that are not said, it just doesn't sit right. It's like, I don't know. I wouldn't do that in front of me. If you want to make the argument, then I don't know. It just, the way it was handled wasn't great. Okay, that said, I think this was a good debate. I think that the negative wins this Waldesad, and does enough work on the case to kind of, this has already been covered. I also think that the neg sort of wins that these cartels exist, which solve some of these arguments about marijuana being good, because the AF's marijuana cards are just like marijuana is good, not like super new future marijuana is good. And even then, the neg is like the cartels can do it, like after post-nuclear war or whatever, they'll clean up this stuff. So that and like the COVID hurting the economy, and they're kind of like cleaning up the court clog, is enough to sort of like clean up the case, right? Like the neg is winning an extinction scenario that's conceded. more or less, right? The argument that you have is that there's no specific link, which is, you know, not a compelling argument. I think a more compelling argument is there's no link, right, with some explanation, because I just don't. I mean, this link card is not good, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it's quite bad. You know, and I'd be maybe more sympathetic to the F on that, but the F is also reading some not great cards. But you just need time to get to there. Like, maybe put one advantage first, answer that advantage, get to these DAs, get to the other advantage, and I think you're in a much better spot in this debate. Another possible strategy is that the negative reads a bunch of cards in the 1-R on a disad that you dropped. So you'd be like, oh, they're reading new cards, right? So now it's my turn to read new cards. You know, I don't know what I do, right? But you're behind in this debate, so be bold, right? Just read Bio D bad. You know, we got to lose some Bio D, and just be like, what am I supposed to do? They read all these new cards. Like, why would that neg read new cards on a dropped impact? I don't know. It's just an invitation for you to do something like that. I agree with everybody else that this T stuff, you're just not. Again, be bold. Like, just make a few arguments on T and be like, if I'm going to lose on T, I'm going to lose on T. But you need that time elsewhere. Like, they've conceded this no abuse argument and this other stuff. And I mean, I think if you go for T, it's a much cleaner debate for me. Like, the T arguments are not the correct response. I mean, they're all substantial arguments. This argument is dropped, you know, at the top. So if you just kind of like go for T, you go for T. So, I mean, I think that the F is probably winning some risk of the advantage that's outweighed by the wall DA. And I mean, I also agree you shouldn't go for both disads. You should, like, you know, go into the case, but this other disad is more or less dropped in the last speech. So I guess there's some risk of that too. So the combination of those things outweigh the, you know, the risk of the case for me.
I don't know why I always refuse to collapse in front of you, Joe, and I go for too much, but
I don't know.
I don't know. You're the only person that I can identify.
Oh, I mean, it really, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I know.
It opened a lot of doors, right, that weren't there before.
Yeah.
So that's not.
Definitely. Thank y'all.
The only question I just have is like, did I just not do a good job explaining global governance in like the 2AR? Because I just didn't hear like that interact with any of their like impacts. Because we read like the good global governance card, like the Luke card. I thought I extended that in like the 2AR. I just want to make sure, like, I don't know, maybe I couldn't have been clear on like there's like two scenarios on the Canada advantage. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just like Canada secessionism, but also like the good governance stuff is also good.
Right. So I mean, I do think that the neg is extending some args about the courts being okay because of you know, they're like cleaning up the court system now. You're like, this is sort of blippy and not extended well, which is like fair. But I mean, the DA is dropped, right? So it's like,